Have you ever felt the air change the second you stepped outside your front door, like the world suddenly decided you didn't belong? That was me. I moved into what I thought was a quiet, friendly neighborhood, and for the first week everything seemed normal. I waved at neighbors, smiled, even helped Mrs. Henderson carry groceries one evening. Little did I know, I had just poked a sleeping bear, or in this case a whole pack. It started with small things, a glance too long, a whisper behind my back, a door that wouldn't close properly. I laughed it off at first. Maybe I'm imagining it, I told myself. But then, one morning, I saw it. My trash cans tipped over. Not a random thing, not an accident. Someone had done it. And there was a note, scrawled in shaky, angry handwriting. Go back where you came from. My stomach dropped. I stared at it, thinking, are you kidding me? This is my home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every encounter, every smile, every polite wave. Did they notice the color of my skin before anything else? Was it all just a facade until I moved in? And the paranoia. Oh, the paranoia. Every sound outside, every door closing, every laugh in the distance made me jump. I started checking my windows, my locks, my mailbox. I even caught myself asking, do I make too much noise cooking? Ridiculous, right? But that's what fear does. It turns your brain into a messy courtroom, questioning your every move. Then came the emails. Anonymous, threatening, accusing me of ruining the neighborhood. My neighbors, people I had waved at just days before, were orchestrating a campaign to make me leave. And the worst part? Watching others in the neighborhood either ignore it or subtly agree. I felt trapped, angry, and completely alone. But here's the thing. Fear can be paralyzing, but it can also ignite fire. And I wasn't about to let a few cowardly voices decide my fate. You know that moment when someone underestimates you and you realize they've just handed you the ultimate advantage? That was me. That's when I decided I wasn't leaving. I was going to fight back. And not in a way they could see coming. Have you ever had that moment when injustice feels so heavy that it either crushes you or makes you sharper, smarter, and a little bit dangerous? Yeah, that was me. And it all started with that first note, that first act of cowardice, and a decision to turn fear into action. So, what did I do first? Did I call the police? Did I march up to every neighbor with my fists ready? Nope. I paused, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that reactions driven by anger can make you look guilty when you're the victim. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every note, every tipped-over trash can, every sideways glance. I took pictures, wrote down times, and even started recording short videos of my property each morning. I became what I jokingly called a neighborhood detective, but in reality I was protecting myself. Now let me be honest, being vigilant like that is exhausting. I found myself double-checking my locks, peeking through blinds, and imagining the worst-case scenarios in my head. Was that the mailman, or was it one of them pretending to be friendly? You know that feeling when you hear a branch snap outside and your heart actually skips a beat? Yeah, that was my new normal. But here's where it gets even stranger, and, in hindsight, a little funny. One neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who lived across the street, waved at me every morning like nothing was wrong. But then I noticed, every time I waved back, her smile stiffened, and she hurried inside. I swear it was like living in a sitcom, except instead of laughter, there was tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. And oh, the passive-aggressive notes kept oming. Your lawn looks funny. We hope you enjoy your stay for now. At one point, I found a note criticizing the color of my curtains. Curtains? Who complains about curtains unless they have nothing better to do? But each note, each act, added fuel to my fire. It made me realize something important. Fear works both ways. They wanted me scared, shrinking, fading away, and every time I refused, every time I laughed at their ridiculousness, it chipped away at their confidence. They thought they were powerful, but in reality, they were fragile, and humor became my secret weapon. I started sending back little notes of my own. not threats, just subtle jabs. Hope your grass grows as fast as your imagination. I even shared a photo of my trash can upright, captioned, "Still standing, still smiling." They couldn't see my face, but I was having my own silent victory. And that's when I knew I wasn't just surviving. I was planning my counterattack. Things escalated fast after that. You know how in movies, the villain always makes one mistake that turns the tide? That was me, except in real life. One morning, I came outside to find my mailbox completely destroyed, not just tipped over, obliterated, letters scattered like confetti at a parade, and for a brief second I froze. Then I laughed. Yes, I actually laughed. I thought, wow, they really hate my mail, don't they? I mean, who puts this much effort into being petty? But the laughter didn't last long. I realized this was no joke anymore. Someone was trying to intimidate me, to make me feel like I didn't belong here. And if I'm honest, there was fear creeping in, like that cold, sinking feeling you get when you realize the fight isn't just online or behind closed doors. It's right in front of you, in your yard, in your mailbox, in your very life. So I did what any rational person would do. I fought back, not with fists or screaming, but with evidence, with strategy. I started installing cameras. Yup, big, obvious cameras, the kind that scream, "I see you," and suddenly, the neighborhood's dynamics began to shift. People who were previously bold in their whispers or sideways glances began to act nervous. Have you ever noticed how bullies falter when they realize someone is watching? It's almost hilarious. And then came the prank, or what I like to call the psychological mic drop. I took a picture of the culprits in the act, caught them red-handed dumping another trash can, and sent it anonymously to the neighborhood association. Just the right tone, polite, factual, and undeniable. Within hours, the gossip chain went wild. Oh, they were furious. But here's the twist. They didn't know it was me. I had turned the tables. Suddenly, the hunters became the hunted. And the best part? I could finally walk outside without checking every shadow. For the first time, there was a sense of control. And yes, the fear was still there, lurking like a background track in a suspense film. But I had learned how to manage it. I realized something powerful. The more you refuse to be intimidated, the more the oppressors reveal themselves. Their anger, their lies, their ridiculous rules, they crumble under scrutiny. And humor became my shield again. I'd joke with friends, I'm basically a neighborhood superhero. My superpower, making racists uncomfortable. It sounds silly, but it worked. And it set the stage for what was coming next, the full confrontation, where I finally stood up openly and refused to back down. The day of the confrontation arrived like a storm you've been waiting for but don't really want. I had everything in place. Cameras, documented incidents, photos, notes, all of it. And let me tell you, walking outside that morning felt like stepping onto a stage I didn't audition for. My heart was racing, but my head was clear. I had rehearsed in my mind every possible reaction, every possible excuse they might throw at me. And yes, I practiced. CD sarcastic comebacks too, because if you can't laugh at the absurdity of racism, you might just cry. I walked down the street, holding my coffee like a shield, and there they were, Mr. Entitled, Mrs. Collins, the ringleaders of this petty terror campaign. The air was thick like static before a lightning strike. I stopped at a safe distance and smiled. That smile, my friends, is dangerous. It says, I see you, I'm not afraid, and I know what you did. They didn't smile back. They looked shocked, flustered, like someone had turned on a spotlight in their living room while they were still in pajamas. And that's when I started talking. Calm, clear, direct. I've documented everything, every note, every act of intimidation. You've tried to make me leave this neighborhood. You've failed, and now everyone knows. You should have seen their faces. Priceless. A mix of anger, embarrassment, and panic. It's fascinating how fear looks on people who thrive on making others afraid. And here's where humor sneaks in. You know that awkward moment when someone tries to act tough but fails spectacularly? Yeah, I used that. By the way, I said, your artistic attempts at mailbox destruction? Absolutely terrifying for 5 seconds, then kind of sad. I swear they wanted the ground to swallow them whole, but the real power came not from insults but from truth. I calmly explained that I had shared evidence with the neighborhood association and that any further harassment would have serious consequences. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't threatening, I was simply exposing facts. And that, my friends, is the ultimate pattern interrupt. People who rely on fear hate facts. Facts ruin their carefully constructed little world. The Collinses muttered something about misunderstandings and neighbors needing space, but it was weak, flimsy, and transparent. I had turned the spotlight on them, and there was no escaping it. And just like that, the dynamic shifted. No longer was I the target, they were on notice. For the first time in weeks, I felt relief, not fear. I realized something profound. Standing up doesn't always mean fighting physically. Sometimes it's about being seen, being heard, and refusing to be invisible. And in that moment, I knew the next steps would be about reclaiming my peace, my home, and my dignity. After that confrontation, you'd think things would calm down, right? Oh no, that's not how fear-driven people operate. What followed was what I like to call the silent war. Instead of overt threats, they became sneaky. Subtle digs, sideways comments, passive-aggressive notes slipped under my door. Hope you enjoy your weekend for now. Some of us prefer a quieter neighborhood. Little things designed to make me question myself, to plant seeds of doubt. And at first, it worked. I found myself double-checking my locks again, hesitating when I took out the trash, and wondering if I should avoid eye contact on my morning walks. But here's the thing about resilience. You either let it control you, or you get smarter. I chose smarter. I started keeping a log of every interaction. Names, dates, times, even the tone of their voices. I was collecting ammunition not for revenge, but for protection. And then there were the microaggressions in public. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes, comments about how nice it must be to have your kind move in, the whispered, "You don't belong," that somehow always floated just out of earshot. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, but humor became my coping mechanism. I'd laugh to myself, imagining them as cartoon villains, their exaggerated sneers and ridiculous notes turning into something absurd rather than terrifying. One day, I even left a note of my own on my lawn. Lawn still growing, spirit still intact, subtle, playful, and just enough to confuse them. And here's the kicker. Some neighbors started noticing. People who had been quiet, who had probably felt uncomfortable watching the harassment, began nodding, smiling, even offering support. That small community of allies grew quietly, and it reminded me that standing up doesn't always mean standing alone. But fear was still there. That instinctive pause before opening the door, the glance over the shoulder, the internal debate about whether I should say something or just ignore it. Those moments were exhausting. Yet every challenge strengthened me. I realized the more ridiculous their efforts became, the less power they actually had. And the more visible I made my calm, my confidence, my humor, the more powerless they felt. It was like watching a balloon deflate slowly, the air escaping with every rational, documented, and composed action I took. And in this silent war, I discovered something I hadn't anticipated. Strength isn't loud. Strength isn't about confrontation alone. Strength is about persistence, intelligence, and refusing to let fear dictate your life. So while the neighborhood simmered, I planned my next move, a move that would finally shift everything from subtle tension to undeniable victory. And then it happened, the moment I'd been quietly preparing for. One morning, I caught them red-handed trying to sneak into my yard while I was away. The nerve! I swear if this were a movie, the audience would be laughing, but in real life it was terrifying and ridiculous all at once. I had my camera rolling, everything documented, ready to show the world exactly who they really were. And let me tell you, seeing their faces when they realized they were being recorded, priceless. Panic, disbelief, and that classic, "oh no, we messed up" expression. It's like they had finally realized that the little person they thought they could intimidate wasn't little at all. I had turned the table so completely that they looked like clowns in slow motion. And here's where humor and justice collide. I shared the footage anonymously with the neighborhood association. Not a word, not a comment, just pure evidence. Within hours, the gossip network, oh yes, the one they had tried to untroll, exploded. Neighbors who had been silent started talking, some even siding with me, asking if I was okay, expressing shock at the behavior. The fear they had tried to instill? Suddenly, it was backfiring on them. The very acts of intimidation that were supposed to make me shrink were making them shrink. It's amazing how quickly power shifts when truth is exposed. And here's the ironic part. They tried to act innocent, but the footage didn't lie. Every attempt at sneaky harassment, every note, every tipped trash can, every sideways glance, they were all captured, undeniable. And the best part? I didn't even have to confront them directly. I let the evidence do the talking. I watched from a distance, sipping my coffee, and yes, laughing quietly to myself. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing people who thrive on fear finally realize it doesn't work. And that's when I realized something even more important. Standing up doesn't mean fighting fire with fire. Sometimes it's about patience, strategy, and letting others reveal their own weaknesses, and in this case, the universe did the heavy lifting. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The constant anxiety, the sleepless nights, the feeling of being hunted, it all began to fade. But here's the catch. This wasn't over. Oh no. There were still whispers, still subtle digs, still passive-aggressive notes. But I had learned the game, and now I was ready to play it better, smarter, and with a little humor thrown in. The neighborhood had underestimated me, and that's the moment when everything changed. Because once someone realizes they're not alone, and that justice can be clever and calm, they become unstoppable. And that, my friends, is exactly what I had become. After the footage went public, things shifted dramatically. The Collinses and their cronies started getting sloppy. You know that moment when people who rely on intimidation suddenly realize they're losing control? It's almost comical, like watching toddlers try to play chess. Notes became frantic, handwriting shaky, spelling errors multiplying as if their fear translated into chaos. One day I found a note stuck to my door in block letters. "Stop watching us." Really? Stop watching you? I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Yes, I was still tense. Yes, fear lingered like a shadow, but now it was balanced with power. I wasn't the hunted anymore. I was the strategist. And here's the beautiful part. The more desperate they became, the easier it was to predict their moves. I could almost hear their thoughts. She's smarter than us. She knows what we're doing. And they were right. I did know. Every act, every whisper, every sideways glance, I had anticipated it. I started leaving small, subtle notes of my own. Not threats, not insults, just reminders that I was present, aware, and untouchable. Mailbox still standing, spirit intact, smile. Another. Morning walk went well. Hope yours did too. The humor was intentional. It confused them, undermined their seriousness, and gave me joy. And then came the tipping point. They tried to rally the neighborhood against me. "She's causing tension. She's disruptive," they whispered in corners, hoping for allies. But here's the twist. The neighborhood had already seen the evidence. My calm, documentation, and clever humor had won hearts silently. Their whispers fell flat. I even received supportive notes from neighbors I barely knew, offering quiet encouragement. Imagine that. People who had once turned away were now allies. And all the while, the Collinses grew more frantic, more erratic. One morning, I caught them trying to secretly photograph my house, and I didn't just document it. I uploaded a photo to the neighborhood association with a caption, "Caught again, still smiling." By this point, they were exhausted, tense, and more importantly, powerless. Every attempt at intimidation backfired. Every act made them look smaller. And the saint part. I had remained calm, witty, and in control the entire time. Fear no longer dictated my life. Strategy did. And humor had become my secret weapon, disarming bullies in ways they never anticipated. I realized something profound. Racism, intimidation, and fear thrive in shadows. Shine a light on them, expose them with evidence and cleverness, and they shrivel. And that's exactly what I did. The Collinses lost control, the neighborhood saw the truth, and I reclaimed my space, my peace, and my dignity. The final showdown wasn't dramatic like a movie fight scene. It was quiet, deliberate, and completely satisfying. I had everything documented, my allies aware, and the Collinses' credibility crumbling fast. One morning I saw them pacing in their yard, glancing at my house like prey watching a lion. And you know what? I just smiled. That smile wasn't fear, wasn't sarcasm. It was victory simmering under calm. The neighborhood association called a meeting after receiving multiple reports, and suddenly it was no longer my one-person battle. They had to face the facts in front of others, and their bravado evaporated like morning fog. They tried their usual tactics: denial, minimization, blame shifting, but every claim I had already documented countered them. Every act, every note, every attempt at intimidation, it was all evidence, undeniable and in black and white. And the reactions? Priceless. Other neighbors were shocked, some nodding silently, some openly expressing support. The Collinses tried to make eye contact, but they kept looking away, realizing they had no ground to stand on. And here's where humor worked its magic again. During the meeting, when Mr. Collins muttered, "I think she's exaggerating," I couldn't resist a gentle, sarcastic smile and said, "Exaggerating? Funny, I thought documenting 3 months of harassment would cover exaggeration." The room stifled. Laughter. He flushed. Their intimidation strategy had not only failed, it had made them look ridiculous, and the whispers and side comments that had haunted me, they faded. People finally saw them for what they were. Bullies clinging to prejudice and fear. The neighborhood's energy shifted completely. It was no longer tension-heavy, it was relief-heavy. I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't known in months. And while some remnants of discomfort lingered, old habits die slowly, the power dynamics had completely reversed. I had reclaimed my home, my peace, and my dignity without losing my calm or my humor. And here's the kicker. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, evidence, and refusing to be invisible. Racism and fear thrive in silence, but when you shine a light, document the facts, and remain composed, they lose every ounce of power they thought they had. I had learned something critical. Persistence, strategy, and clever resilience are far more effective than anger. And the beauty? I could finally step outside in the morning, drink my coffee, and smile without fear. I had turned a nightmare into a story of triumph, showing not just the Collinses, but anyone who might underestimate me that fear doesn't win when you refuse to let it. And as I walk down the street today, I do it with pride, humor, and a sense of victory that no act of hatred can ever take away. Looking back, I realize the entire experience taught me more than just how to handle a toxic neighborhood. It taught me about strength, resilience, and the unexpected power of humor. Fear is a powerful thing. It makes your heart race, your mind second-guess every move, and your body tense up over things that seem small to everyone else. But here's the secret. Fear can also become fuel. Every note, every sideways glance, every petty act of intimidation became a reason to sharpen my strategy, document every detail, and respond with clarity and calm. And yes, with humor. Because humor is like kryptonite to bullies. It confuses them, disarms them, and reminds you that their power is only as real as the fear you give it. I also learned that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is quiet. It's the act of opening your door, walking your dog, or sipping your coffee outside while knowing someone is trying to scare you. It's showing up even when every instinct tells you to shrink, hide, or run. And in showing up, you discover an inner strength you never knew you had. I found allies, too, in neighbors who had been hesitant to act, people who were quietly observing but too afraid to speak. When they finally stepped forward, offering support or just a nod of acknowledgement, it reminded me that strength isn't about being alone. It's about creating a network of truth and solidarity that fear cannot dismantle. And here's something funny but true. The Collinses' attempts to intimidate me only exposed their own insecurities. Every act, every note, every sideways glance revealed their weakness, not mine. By standing my ground, I wasn't just defending myself, I was shining a light on their hypocrisy and their prejudice. And the best part? I didn't have to fight with anger or aggression. Facts, patience, documentation, and a sprinkle of humor were my weapons, and they were unstoppable. So, if you've ever felt powerless, overlooked, or targeted because of who you are, remember this: resilience, strategy, and composure can flip the entire script. You don't have to meet hate with hate. You meet it with intelligence, courage, and yes, a little laughter. That's how you win, that's how you expose the truth, and that's how you make fear powerless. And if you've ever experienced something like this or know someone who has, remember, you're not alone. Strength can grow in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the best revenge is thriving while the bullies crumble quietly around you. By the time the dust settled, I realized something important. The neighbor. Rudd hadn't changed overnight, but I had. Fear no longer dictated my mornings, my walks, or even my coffee breaks. The Collinses, their attempts at control had crumbled, leaving only embarrassment and exposure in their wake. And here's the thing, standing up doesn't always look dramatic. It's not about yelling or confrontation. It's about strategy, persistence, and refusing to be invisible. I had learned how to turn every act of intimidation into an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, humor, and intelligence. Every note, every sideways glance, every passive-aggressive whisper became evidence that empowered me instead of hurting me. And the neighborhood began to notice. People who had once avoided me or turned a blind eye were now acknowledging my presence with respect, even admiration. The very community that had been silent in the face of harassment slowly shifted because I refused to be intimidated. And in that process, I discovered an important truth. Racism and fear thrive in silence, but they collapse when met with courage, documentation, and calm assertiveness. I also realized that allies can appear in unexpected ways. Neighbors I barely knew offering support, friends who had moved away checking in, and even strangers online sharing their encouragement. That network of solidarity makes a world of difference when facing injustice. And let's be honest, humor played a huge role too. Laughing at the absurdity of their fear-fueled actions kept me sane and reminded me that the power they thought they had was an illusion. The more desperate they became, the more ridiculous they looked. And me? I stayed composed, calm, and unshakable. So if you've ever felt targeted, silenced, or powerless because of prejudice or discrimination, remember this: you can fight back smartly. You can document, strategize, and use the tools of reason, persistence, and even humor to protect yourself and turn the tables. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, unwavering, and smart. And as I look around today, I walk with confidence, knowing I reclaim not just my home, but my dignity, my peace, and my voice. You don't have to live in fear, and you don't have to let injustice define you. And if this story resonates with you, if you've ever faced discrimination, or if you want to see more stories of resilience and triumph, make sure to subscribe. Hit that button and join a community that refuses to stay silent, that celebrates courage, and that thrives even when others try to intimidate us. Because at the end of the day, standing up, staying strong, and laughing along the way is the best way to win.